This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Jumrukovski, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to the I Love Success podcast. This episode is going to be incredible. I just had this amazing conversation with James Suarez. He's a guy who grew up without his dad, started sports, was angry, started drinking, and had so many inner demons, but he chose to make something positive out of his life, and now he's one of the top 1% real estate agents in the world. We share so much tools during this podcast, so I can't wait for you to listen to it. Let's do it. Let's welcome James Suarez. Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, James. As I said before we started, you're like a new role model to me. I'm new in this field, and I'm super happy that I got to learn a lot from you already. So we're going to start digging deep and talking about your journey because it's quite remarkable. So who is James as a human being?
Who is James? So I love in your introduction it says to pretty much enjoy the journey. And man, has it been a journey and a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I also very much admire you. Anyone who's achieved great success in something that they're passionate about is truly admirable. But my life, was not always a success. Like you, I was an athlete. I played more of the baseball and football route, and that was kind of my discipline. Luckily, I was still a student, but what kept me going was sports. Yeah. I grew up with a broken family. My dad left us early on, single family, or single parent. My mom raised us. I still remember walking golf courses and picking through garbage cans to get cans so that we could go and recycle them and get money to eat. As a kid, it wasn't a shameful act, but as I grew older and reflecting on it, I became ashamed of it. I also remember all the kids in my school would have these new Nikes and the Jordans, and I shopped at Payless. And I remember I had a pair of I think they were called Pro Wings. And I used to make up stories about how special these shoes were and how expensive they were, but really they, were Payless, and, that's how I grew up, just kind of being ashamed of who I am. And then my mother met an amazing man. His name was Marty. He was my hero. He was my mentor. He was, my father figure. He was a doctor. He was well respected in the community, treated my mom like a queen, treated my sister and I like his own. Never smoked, never drank, was athletic, was smart, was well respected in the community. Again, he was my hero. And long story short, when I was 16, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and 6 months later he died.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah.
And as a 16-year-old boy, especially with the roller coaster of a ride I had been on, I didn't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
And that's where I was introduced to alcohol, which
At 16?
At 16.
Yeah.
And that I used that to numb the pain.
Yeah. Did you feel at that point, first your father is leaving you, and then this amazing role model, he got sick, but did you feel that he left you as well, or how did that?
Of course, I was. I felt abandoned. And the thing is, it probably would have been easier if he just left. He lingered. We would, as kids, we'd go to his house like every other weekend or once a month. But he would make me go to work with him, and on my weekends, he would make me shovel dirt And then we'd go to his house, and I remember like every time I'd go there, I couldn't sleep. It was I would have nightmares. And then I always try to like make him proud of me. So again, I sports were my clutch.
Yeah.
So, but he probably came to 5 or 6 games my entire life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was hard growing up like that, and then an amazing man coming into my life who always told me how much he loved me and how proud he was of me.
Yeah.
And then to have that taken away,
Yeah.
that was no kid should have to experience that. And I became very angry, very, very angry. I was angry at the world. I was angry at God, higher power, whatever you choose to call him. It wasn't fair.
And was that a kind of numbing the pain? Is that why you start drinking?
Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't know how to deal with it. I was angry. I was young. I was insecure. It was kind of going back to the pro rings. Like all these kids, had the cool shoes, right? All these kids that I grew up with had great families, right? And once again, I had the pro wing shoes, right? I had the less than, the leftovers, the abandonment.
Yeah.
And I had to go through it all again. Again, luckily I had sports, which I used as a clutch that kept me somewhat on a path.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't, to do a lot of drinking and then show up for the game.
Yeah.
I would normally wait till after the game to do that.
With your buddies, or would you drink by yourself, or how did that work?
Mainly with my buddies. At that point, it was still with my buddies. But, reflecting back, things started getting out of control. I started getting out of control. I still have this image of me, we were driving down, I was drunk, we were driving in a car, my friend's driving, and I'm leaning out the passenger side window, just like completely, out, sitting on the window and just leaning back.
Yeah.
Everything, I'd push it to the edge. It got worse, but I had no fear of death, and, did not mind if that was what would happen. I was just an enormous amount of pain.
Yeah. And do you think your buddies knew at that time? Because I know as an athlete, let's be honest, goes on a lot of drinking, which we don't know after the games. If you win, you party. If you lose, you sorrow, or whatever you want to call it. But did your buddies, your teammates, did they know what was going on because you were the worst, so to speak, or was it just like a normal thing that kids did at that time?
I think to some extent it was normal. They knew I took it to the extreme. I also don't think they knew how to deal with me, and I took actions to push them away. I mean, I became very angry, and I don't think they liked hanging out with me.
Yeah.
And I kept getting, we kept getting in trouble or getting into fights. I remember with my best friend, like I remember drifting away from my best friend, like knowingly, like, okay, I need to make this better.
Yeah.
And he finally like invited me to hang out and go out and then go back to his house. And right before we went back to his house, I picked a fight with a kid that you do not pick fights with.
Yeah.
And he and his gang or posse, whatever you want to call him, came to his house, and his mother answered the door. And I just like, once again, like it was like I did it again.
Yeah.
Right.
But you wanted that at that point, right? You wanted to do that, or
I was out of control.
Yeah.
I was out of control. I did not. I could not control my thoughts, my emotions, my actions. It was just perpetual spiral down.
Yeah.
And that continued. And then the topper of it is I got hurt playing sports, and then that career was over.
Yeah.
And then
so you couldn't continue.
And the thing is, and to be perfectly and brutally honest, I don't think I wanted to continue anymore.
Yeah.
Right? I think the partying life started to consume me. I looked for the easier, softer way. I looked for a way out. I found a way out. I found other things to numb me even more. And I didn't want to deal with reality, right? And when I partied, I didn't have to deal with reality. So instead of pursuing sports, I went to the University of Florida on an academic scholarship. But within a quarter, I think it was, or halfway through the year, I lost my academic scholarship. I got a 0.5 GPA, which is challenging to do. It's
it's a performance.
Right. Yeah, 3 Fs and a D in tennis. So I didn't show up, right? I didn't care. I got my bartending license, and partying. Sports was out, so the discipline was out, structure was out, and I partied. And
at this point, this is a very good point where you were saying when you got injured, you didn't want to continue in a way. And I think that is something that we forget to look at, because I've been in sports and I met a lot of people that had injuries that are serious, but we've seen a lot of athletes coming back from that, and they kind of linger away, and no one is there to catch them and lift them up in the world. What would you say to a kid like yourself if you would see him right now? What type of advice?
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because now I have a son, right? And I wish I had a mentor or a coach or a dad, to say, to be there. I'm big into mindset, as you know. I have my morning routine, and I'm really big in growth mindset. But basically what happened was is I failed, right? I massively failed. I got hurt. I massively failed. But what I've learned now, that those times in our lives where we have the biggest challenges are actually the opportunities for the most amount of growth and success. Right? So no one was there to tell me, like, this is a great opportunity for you to grow and get better. Right? Instead, I looked for the easy way out. And I think just in life, people look for the easy way out, and when they're given that, they jump on it, versus looking at a failure as just a setback. And again, probably the biggest opportunity for growth. I'm sure we'll get into it, but I eventually got sober, right? And I look at that, as the most profound blessings in my life. Yet at the time, it was the biggest massive failure of my life. Right? And that could have gone 2 ways very easily.
So let's look at that. So when did you kind of hit rock bottom, and how did you get sober?
Okay. Well, I mean, again, at the University of Florida, when I lost my scholarship, it was a big eye opener, because I was used to getting recognized, right? I'd see my name in the paper. I'd be winning awards, scholarships, letters. I was used to that. Now, none of that was happening, right? And when I would look in the mirror, I'd almost not recognize the person I would see. And I started to hate who I had become, right? My whole life, I'm very competitive, right? Like you. And so I want to be a winner, right? It's all about winning. That's why we push ourselves as hard as we push ourselves, because we want to win. And I was a loser. I was an absolute loser. I hated the person I had become. And again, I continued to push away all the love in my life. I pushed away, my friends. I pushed away my family. I pushed away my mom, who had already been through so much. I mean, my mom was my biggest fan, and my mom, right? I mean, and I was, until this day, was always a mama's boy.
And pushing away, that's shame in a way, right? You don't want people to see you for the person you have become. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Because that's what we do a lot of times, right? We don't want to show who we are and show up in this world, so we push away. And we all do it in small parts every day, kind of. And I think when you are the person on the outside that you truly are on the inside, that's when you're truly happy. And we're going to talk more about that. But
oh, yeah. And the word happiness did not, that was not something who described me. I mean, I can distinctly remember, I think it was my 21st birthday. We, I grew up in Florida, so we were big Bucks fans. My mom knew, and she tried to do everything she could to make me happy. And so she took me to a Bucks game, and then afterwards we were supposed to go out to a nice dinner with other friends and family. And instead of sitting with her and my sister, I decided that I wanted to go up and be with my friends who had a box, right? So I told them I'm just going to go up there for halftime. Well, I ended up staying up there the entire second half. You know, free beer, got absolutely wasted. Finally met up with them. She was like so heartbroken that happened, right? And then, you know, again, I despised who I was. And so when she, you know, when I had to deal with the situation driving to the restaurant, I made her stop, got out of the car on a busy freeway, proceeded to somehow take a taxi to my car, and decided to drive back up to the University of Florida. Now, granted, I was wasted, and I'll never forget this. I was driving back up, and the drive from Tampa to Gainesville, to their city or their fields, right? Or there's not forest, but it's lined with trees. Well, I passed out while driving, and I woke up driving in the middle of this field, right? And it could have happened, if it happened anywhere besides there, it would have been a tree, or it would have been a house, or it would have been another car. And I could tell you story after story after story about situations like that. Whereas, like, I don't want to say I should have died, because if I should have, I would have, but like I very well could have and hurt others. And again, my life, very different path. If that happened, right? I probably wouldn't be here, but could have hurt others. And anyways, but that was like a Tuesday of my life, right? And again, just complete shame and hate for myself. And then I lost the desire to live. I didn't want to kill myself, but I was at a point where it didn't matter if I woke up the next day. And so I decided to get into skydiving, right? And I would, you know, probably not the best choice, but I would push the limit there and see, you know, how low I could go without pulling, you know, the cord. And I would just, you know, it was insanity. It was what it was. And I, again, got to a point where it's like, okay, James, I either need help and need to get better, or like life is going to be over. And what happened was, I was dating a girl and I broke up with her, and then a few weeks later she came back to me and told me that she was pregnant with my child. And when that happened, something happened where it made me look at my life and realize, like, I was a complete loser. I had absolutely nothing to offer this kid. Like, here's a kid who had so much potential, and now I was actually getting kicked out of the University of Florida because I continued getting those bad grades. And I just remember, like, I need help. You know, long story short, it ended up being a fake pregnancy, and it was just her way to get me back. But I mean, that's the type of person I attracted in my life. I don't blame her. I actually thank her for that situation, but like attracts like. And she was very unhealthy, and I was very unhealthy, and we attracted each other. Again, like attracts like. But to this day, I'm very grateful that situation happened, because that's when I went to my mom and said, okay, Mom, I need help. And I'll never forget, she sent me, you know, I went to rehab, and I remember looking at a water bottle with my name on it. And again, I was used to seeing my names on plaques and in the newspaper and awards, and here it was on a water bottle in a rehab. And I broke down. I broke down. And that's where it was like, okay, James, line in the sand, you know, massive failure.
I mean, we all fail, just in different layers, and I think sometimes that big failures are also the catapult to doing something great. And how did you change your life? You know, because I'm just thinking about failure because I watched the Netflix speech with Brené Brown yesterday. I don't know if you've seen the new one, and she talks about, like, if you're gonna do stuff in life, you're gonna be on the arena, you're gonna fucking fail. Not I'm taking a chance I might fail. You're gonna fail. That's just how it is. But then it is, how do you take that and do something good about it? So how did you change your life?
I wish I had an answer, you know, the how and the why. It's just, I wanted to be a winner. You know, my whole life I wanted to be a winner, and I wasn't about to quit. Right, and I was, you know, introduced to a different path, and I don't want to say I found God because I'm not religious whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, I was raised, you know, Jewish and Christian. I celebrated Hanukkah. I celebrated Christmas. I was raised very confused. But I always believed like in a higher power, right, so to speak. And I feel like that came into my life. And again, I had faith. Again, I had faith in myself. And I knew that I could once again, you know, be a winner. Yeah. Right. And I didn't. I promised myself I would not give up.
Did someone tell you that as well, or you had to tell yourself at this point?
There was. I will never forget this. There in college, I roomed with this guy for 6 months. You know, just randomly. While my you know, I was in between places, and the guy came up to me randomly, and said, "James, you're destined for greatness." Right, and that just really sunk in for me, and I can still to this day hear that over and over in my mind. Right, and I desire to be great. I desire to be a winner. There is so much beauty and experience that this world has to offer, and I want to experience it all. You know, not just the monetary, but, you know, the love, right? The love that with my mom, with my family, now with my wife, with my kids. You know, I feel like even to this day, like they have a saying in AA, that, you know, living a life beyond your wildest dreams. Now, if I can get brutally honest, like you asked me that, you know, back in the day, it would have been about like big boats and big cars and private jets. Like I live a life beyond my wildest dreams, and it's not the big boats and the big cars, you know, and the private jets, but yesterday was Mother's Day, right? Spending time with my wife and my kids and the love that we had all day yesterday. You know, I got my wife, you know, very nice gifts. Like I have the luxury of doing that. But she said at the end of the day, you know what my favorite thing was, James? My favorite thing was when it was you, me, and Julian playing in the pool. Right? Like those experiences, those memories, like that journey, right? That's what makes it all worthwhile. All the pain, all the suffering, and I knew that was an option for me in rehab. I knew that I could, again, you know, climb the mountain, get to the top. I knew it was going to be a massive struggle, but everything in my life has been a massive struggle, even as an athlete. Like I'm not naturally talented. Like I was not the first one picked, you know, in grade school for sports.
Just like me.
I had to, you know, I had to work harder than anybody else. I had to be the first one in, last one to leave, in order to beat out my competition. Right.
So how long have you been sober now?
16 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's huge. So let's talk. First, I just want to say something. I've got to spend like quite amount of hours with you the last couple of weeks, and I've made a lot of notes, and I've been thinking a lot about the things that you are saying, because what I do, I study success, and what you have accomplished here in your business, that's awesome. But the things that I really got happy and why you are a role model for me, you did that, but you also said something that really resonated with me. Like my wife, I couldn't attract her before. I had to change who I was in order to attract a person like that, and having family and business success and finding that balance, that is so hard, and it's day to day, right? But that you're doing that and you're focusing on being the best dad you could be, because you didn't have a dad like that. You're using all your fuel in a positive way. It could have gone completely different way, but you choose that, and I applaud you for that. So let's talk about you. You're a busboy at Islands now, and you meet some real estate agents, and like how did that kind of story work out?
So the way the story worked is, so I went to rehab.
Yep.
Okay. And I made friends in rehab, and it was actually in Phoenix. And a lot of my friends that I met there were coming out to LA.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge, you know, sobriety is huge out here. It's almost cool to be sober out here, which is funny. And so I asked my mom, can I move out there? She's like, absolutely not.
Yeah. And how old are you at this point?
I was 21, 22.
20, yeah.
I think 22. She's like, absolutely not. But here's the deal: if you can stay sober for 6 months, I will consider it. You know, so I went back to Florida. I was put in a sober living halfway house, whatever you want to call it. And then I came out to visit a friend about 6 months, you know, clean and sober, and, you know, fell in love with it. Because again, you know, just the weather and the people and the meetings and the sobriety. And again, I needed to get away from that world. And I did. I moved out here. Some of my friends that I had met out here ended up relapsing pretty early on. So I really only knew one person when I moved out here. But quickly, you know, got into the program and, you know, started making, you know, a life for myself. The mistake I made was that I started putting things in front of my program, in front of AA, which eventually led me to a relapse. Luckily, it was a very short relapse. You know, once you attain a certain level of happiness and serenity, you know, you have to continue to do work to keep on leveling up there, and I stopped doing that. And so you know, there's a lot of demons that I still deal with to this day. I mean, one of them, you know, fatherhood, right? Like, I have a huge insecurity about being a father only because my real father, right, was, I don't get how, like, I have so much love for my kids. I couldn't get how or why you would ever abandon them. But in the back of my mind, you know, there is a voice that says I'm going to do the same thing and I'm going to be a bad dad. And so I have to fight that demon, you know, on a daily basis. And if I don't take continual actions, like if you go and you look at my affirmation book that I write in every morning, it says, you know, I'm a great dad and have massive love for my children, or something along those lines. Just because I have to continue to keep that in check. So, yeah, I when I moved out here, I got sober. I was a busboy for Islands, which is like a local restaurant chain out here, and luckily it shares the same parking lot with a real estate office. And so I used to watch them drive up in their nice cars, you know, their Mercedes, their Lexuses, their Jaguars. You know, they were wearing nice clothes, and then they'd come and eat, you know, and I would overhear conversations about, you know, multi-million-dollar deals. And anyways, one day I got the courage, and in Islands you have to wear like a Hawaiian shirt, right? And then one day I just got the courage to go over and talk to the manager, and I was in my Hawaiian shirt, and said, what do I need to do to become an agent here? And he gave me a list of things to do, and, you know, like a coach, like, you know, I saw that's what I looked at him as, and I did that list of things that he told me to do, and then I went back to him and I was like, okay, now what do I need to do? He gave me another list, which included getting my license, which I failed the real estate exam 3 times, right? Could have quit after the first time, could have quit after the second time, could have quit after the 3rd time. But I was determined, right? One of the intros you said, determination, right? That was actually the slogan of my high school baseball team. Desire, dedication, determination. I had the determination to do this, right? So, you know, I got my license, and then it was game on, right? And I took the same practice that I had in sports to, you know, business, like first one in, last one to leave, and just hustle. There's a lot of sacrifice I did. I remember, you know, my friends would, you know, go out, or my friends would, I actually remember I was in my office, and it was I think it was Cinco de Mayo, or one of these, you know, party days, and I decided to work, and I saw, you know, my office was across the street from Baja Cantina, one of these popular like Mexican restaurants. And there was a big party going on. All these people were partying and walking to the beach, you know, and I felt sorry for myself that I couldn't do that one party, right? And the other one was like participate. And then I thought, you know, I have to sacrifice now so that I can become the man I desire to be, right? I love this saying, and it's a screenshot on my computer, you know, from Muhammad Ali, right? Suffer now to live the rest of my life a champion. And that's the theory that I took, and that's, you know, it was day in, day out, just focus, grind.
I love that. When you talk about this, I think about when when you start karate, because my father, he's my coach in karate actually, and he remembered the first time he started. In karate it's belts, right? So you start at white and all the way to black.
Let me tell you a funny story real quick about that. So I was in karate.
Oh, you was?
Yes, I was. And then it's very disciplined, right, and self-defense. And Corey Resnick said something to me that upset me, and I used one of my moves and broke his nose. And got kicked out of karate.
Oh, wow. Okay, wow.
But yeah, so
that's
the
good.
belt.
Cool.
I think
That's
I only
cool.
got to a yellow belt.
Okay, well, that's
maybe
cool.
Maybe it was purple. But anyways,
we'll do some after.
No, we will not. You will break my nose.
I've broken mine a couple of times,
I'm
actually.
sure.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of because I'm new to real estate, as you know, and everybody's talking about the 87% failure rate, and I see it as a 13% success rate. And I also see why am I here today talking about with the guy that's the 1%. That's what I'm interested in. And the same in karate. My father, he told this when he started. He was the white belt, and he saw when everybody was lining up the black belt, and he said, in a couple of years I'm going to be there. And he was. And I'm thinking about that a lot of times. And now when you're talking, I can just imagine when you started how many people has fallen off, but you have been dedicated to the craft, and you still, and people still to this day, I've been training for since I was 27 years now, and my father more than 40. They always ask, do you still train karate? It's like asking, do you drink water? Do you drink sleep? And I don't know if you get that question. Are you still into real estate? Of course. Yeah, it's part of who you are. And we're going to talk much more about this, but what I love with real estate, that it's so much more than deals. It's about expressing yourself as a human being and develop yourself and carry yourself with integrity, right? And when you had the Ignite course, most of it is about who you are, right? Who you want to become. So let's talk a little bit about that. You've been in the business now for how many years?
I would say, I think it's been like 18 years now.
18 years.
Yeah, 15, somewhere between 15 and 18, somewhere in that ballpark.
Wow. Yeah. And how long did it take to you to become in the number 1 percentile, and what did you have to do to become that person?
Again, it's a grind, right? It was an absolute grind, and I probably, I'm very stubborn, and I did a lot of things wrong. And I was not smart about it, and instead of what I taught at Ignite as model, I try to do things my own way, which again, if I could do it all over again, I would do things massively different, and I would have attained a higher level of success much quicker. So for me, again, I didn't have the right people in my life either, coaching and mentoring me, but basically one of the first, I always knew I always needed a coach or a mentor.
Yeah.
So I found someone who was a mentor. He was one of the top agents in that office, and I recognized him because we worked out at the same gym. And I said, listen, I have a lot of background in exercise and weightlifting, which I can help you with if you mentor me, right? So it was like an exchange, right? So we became workout partners, and I would help him lift, and I kind of trained him, and then in return, he was my mentor in real estate.
Yeah.
And again, for a lot of it too, and success too, it's action. It's taking the action, right? Eventually, you're going to hit a ceiling, but a lot of it's just a lot of people aren't doing the willingness to put the effort in.
Yeah.
Right. So that was not one of my problems. Again, first one in, last one to leave. I had the effort, and eventually, I think my second year in real estate, I beat him in sales. My mentor, right? So early on, I found success. I wasn't by any means in the top 1 percentile, but we did well, and then we partnered, and then we continued to do well. And then unfortunately the real estate crash happened where I lost pretty much everything and was negative, which again could have easily, their sales were not happening in real estate, at least not for us. And again, looking back, instead of, I just tried to survive and not thrive, and I wish I could do it over again, but I couldn't. It was a great learning lesson. So I could have easily gotten out of the real estate game at that point, which a lot of people did, but continued to,
Why did you decide to continue at that point?
Not a quitter. This was a career I had chosen. This was something I'm passionate about, and not a quitter, right? There's no easy way in life, right? if you think you found a shortcut, you haven't, right? You may have found it for a short period of time, but then it's going to be 10 steps backwards, right? So it's just head down, work hard, work harder, right? Sacrifice more. And so we did that, and we kind of dug ourselves out of this hole. Unfortunately, my business partner had made some financial decisions that made it even harder for him to dig himself. So I was also, 20 something at the time, or early 30s, and he was in his 50s, and we had different goals in life as well, and different we were different places in our lives, and he was talking retirement in a couple of years, and that was nowhere where I was at. So our goals didn't really align. And I wanted to reinvest into the business, whereas he wanted to take more home. I wanted to work harder, he wanted to work less. So it got to a point where, for every 5 deals I would do, he would do 1 deal, and the money that we were making, I was in a better financial position where I wanted to reinvest and he wanted to take more home. So it got to a point where I knew if I wanted to grow, I needed to buy him out.
Was that hard?
It was very, I was going to say, that was very hard.
Yeah.
And it was very scary, right? Because there were aspects of the business that he was really good at. Right? I was really good at getting the deal, putting the deal together, and then getting it to what we call in escrow, right? Getting both parties to come together, negotiation, and it goes into escrow. I was very good at that, but I wasn't very good at, from once it goes into escrow to the closing, right? Because there's a lot of details and organization and paperwork that go on during that, and just knowing my personality, that's not one of my strong suits. But it's like, okay, well, I could hire somebody to do that, right? I could leverage myself, and that's when I started really becoming a student as well, of business as well as mindset. It's also where I got introduced to my mentor, right? Because I heard these things about mindset and affirmations, and I had read books, and I kind of scanned over that part, really didn't think much about it. In sports, I remember I used to psych myself up, and I did used to do visualize, but no one really taught me that, right? But now I started learning that, and eventually, I had hit this ceiling, and I remember I can't get past this ceiling, right? And I thought it was about, okay, work harder, go in earlier, stay later, really grind it out. And I couldn't get past this ceiling, whereas finally it was introduced to me, okay, mindset, right? In order to do that, I need to change my mindset. I need to remove these limiting beliefs, right? And that's where I got introduced to my mentor, which was Tom Ferry, where he was a big advocate of mindset. And the point, again, it was okay, I give up. If that's what it takes, then I'm going to try that. And I tried it, and what do you know, right? I had a breakthrough. And I'll never forget, because a year or two later, I went to he has a very popular, one of the biggest real estate seminars. It's called the Summit. We go every year, and I remember I was there, and it was a break time, and I was walking by this guy who said, he had a big thing about mindset and affirmations and whatnot, and I remember walking by this guy who said something like, that was a big waste of time, right? And I remember thinking to myself, man, you have a lot to go through and learn from, right? You're gonna have to go through the suffering. And a lot of people won't go through that suffering, and they will just quit. Whereas what we have to do is open ourselves up, be open-minded, and try new things. And that's why we have mentors, and why we have coaches, and why we model, right? Because we see what's been successful for others, and just model that.
I think that's huge. And a lot of times we think we know it all when we're not in the position that we want to be, and I think that's fear of growing. And we see it all the time, because you don't want to fail. Nobody wants to fail, but if you want to be in the arena, if you want to do good things, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail a lot. So how do we kind of get comfortable with failing? Because I meet a lot of people too, and there's mindset, but it's not for me. Or reading, I'll read that book, and then 3 months later I said, what did you think about that book? Oh, I forgot to buy it. can you tell me what it's about? No, I can't fucking tell you what it's about. You got to do the work, right? If it's hard, like Amazon today, you can get a book tomorrow, right? And we have Amazon across the street. You can get anything you really want. It's out there, but why don't we take this opportunity that we have in this world? And I want to talk about one thing that I mentioned to probably 5 or 6 of my closest friends that I want to inspire. And one thing that you said about, I think it was someone you knew that didn't do the work. We're talking about morning routines here, and you said, so tonight when you go home, you look your son in the eye and say, I'm sorry because I was lazy today and didn't do my job. You're not gonna be able to go to college. We're not gonna go to Disneyland or SeaWorld this year. I'm sorry, son. And then go to your wife and you say, sorry, wife, there's not gonna be any travels this year. It's not gonna be a bigger house, or our son is not gonna go to college. And like, I've had that mindset now since you said that for 1 or 2 weeks, and it helped me a lot. Can you just talk about that? Like, that's one type of motivation, which is kind of a little bit fear of not being the person you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, people are motivated by pain or pleasure, right?
Yeah.
And in a way, you know, my coach used to say you're only cheating yourself, right? So if you are supposed to do 10 reps and you do 8, right? Or you know you could go a little heavier, but you don't, right? You're cheating yourself. But then it's more than that, because you're also cheating the team. You're cheating your teammates because you're not pushing yourself. And then when you get married, it's a partnership, and then you have kids. Like, it's not just about you anymore. So one of my teammates, right, like one of his what's holding him back, right, his one thing is mindset. He's the hardest working guy on my team, right, but he's hitting the ceiling, right? And I've shared my experience, strength, and hope, right, which is like, listen, I've been where you've been, right? And the thing is, he knows it's mindset. So he knows that it's his morning routine. But like, it's the slight edge, right? It's easy to wake up an hour earlier. It's easy not to wake up an hour earlier, right? And you just decide what you're going to do, right? It's easy to have a morning routine. It's easy not, right? And so basically what he's saying by deciding to hit the snooze button is the hopes and dreams that I have for my family, right? The extra hour of sleep, the comfort that I get from the extra hour of sleep are more important, right, than getting up and doing what I know I need to do in order to progress my career. Yeah. I don't know why people choose to do that. I'm still guilty, you know, of hitting the snooze button from time to time in my life, not just like literally, but in, you know, physically and literally in other areas, you know, of my life. But it's also what's important to us. And the failure, I mean, the failure aspect is, that's what everyone needs to understand, right, in the journey of success, right, is one, in order to enjoy the journey, you need to understand that failure is going to be part of your path, and embrace failure, right? We look at failure as a bad thing, where it's honestly one of the best things that can happen, because if you go back in your life and you look at some of your biggest failures, right, they're also the biggest opportunities of growth, right? Breakups, right? Striking out, right? If I never struck out, like, I would have never learned how to improve on the curveball, right? If I had never gotten heartbroken, I would have never known what, you know, love is, right? I wouldn't have known what kind of character defects I had, what kind of characteristics I wanted in a significant other, if I hadn't failed in those relationships. I wouldn't know where I need to improve myself, right? And the thing is, I had this conversation with one of my mentees yesterday, is I've always wanted what I have today, right? And I want much more, right? But if I had this, right? I mean, with this, there's a lot of responsibility. You know, my main man Jay-Z said, you know, more money, more problems, or maybe that was Notorious B.I.G. But it's serious, right? Like, I'm under massive stress all the time, right? Business, financial, kids, right? Once you have kids, and like I'm constantly worried sick about like something happening, you know, to my kids, to my significant my wife, right? I am under massive amount of stress, and if I had the stress that I have today, you know, even 5 years ago, I would be crushed,
Yeah.
paralyzed, right? So we need, it's in the slight edge. We need these baby steps, these stepping stones. Like it's one layer at a time that we're building our foundation. And then we also need to do a self-inventory and assess our foundation all the time, because if there's a crack in it, if we don't deal with that crack and we keep on putting these levels of stress on it, everything will come crumbling down.
Yeah. But what's the end game here? Are you gonna keep doing deals the rest of your life, or do you want to kick back in Hawaii and relax?
I don't think I can kick back in Hawaii, although I joke with my wife and say I know the day I make it is where I can wear Tommy Bahama shirts every day. I mean, it's in me, always to work, right? And I have, my definition of purpose in life is actually to be able to give back to kids who are underprivileged.
Yeah.
So once the real estate game, I don't think the real estate game will ever be in for me. I'll always be somehow invested in it.
Yeah.
But then it will be just to pivot, of helping others as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like Ignite. Like I didn't get paid for Ignite. And that was a massive check of my time. But, I've always been taught to give back.
Yeah.
Right? So the end game, I want to get to the top in this game, right? Yeah. Even though we're, I guess, toward the top, I want to be at the top.
Yeah.
Right? And once I get to a certain point, then I will pivot and probably go into, my definition of purpose in life, which is to help. Kids.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think that's the cool part when you're creating wealth and when you're doing something great. You have the opportunity to give back, right? And I love that you have that purpose in your mind, because that's going to make you work hard for that and enjoy that journey. Can we just talk about... you said something that I really like, and that's the difference between being interested and being committed. What is that, and what does that really mean?
Yeah, that's a good one. So that's something that I got from my mentor, Tom Ferry. Yeah. And I got a brutal awakening to that. So Tom owns the #1 real estate coaching organization in the world, right? And I creatively was able to get Tom to coach me.
How did you do that?
So I was at a summit, and I just knew I wanted to be coached by Tom. I knew I needed to be coached by Tom, and I was determined to be coached by Tom. Now, granted, like, you're in a room of, like, I don't know, 5, 7, 8,000 agents, all with the same desire, right? Everyone wants to be coached by Tom. And I was like, okay, gonna have to figure this right? Whenever there's a will, there's a way. So at the time, his sons were very involved with charity work. Yeah. And so they put together this charity, and if they raise however much money they raise, Tom would match it, right? And Tom's very big in scripting and dialoguing and preparing, right? So I went to his sons, and I said, listen, guys, here's a script for you to read, in which if your dad agrees to this, I will donate $5,000, right? $5,000 I really didn't have, right? $5,000 to coaching, or to your charity.
Yeah.
But in return for that, Tom, your dad, needs to coach me, right? But here, listen, I wrote out this strategic script, and if you just follow it, most likely he will say yes, and you'll get $5,000 toward charity. And they went backstage, right? And the 3 of them came out, right? And I'll never forget it. I still have the contract right over there. Yeah. Right? It's framed. Wow. In which Tom signed it and agreed to it. But he said, listen, James, if I'm going to give you coaching, and if you don't do what I say, you're out of coaching. Yeah. Right? And this was massive for my life to be coached by Tom. Right? And my life started to take off. Like, one of the things you asked is, like, what was one of the pivoting points of becoming the top 1 percentile is having Tom in my life. Yeah. Right? And I think the second year of coaching, he called me out, like, during the summit, right, that I've talked about, and we made a bet. I had to make it in front of everybody. And basically at that point, it was all about setting appointments, and the bet was that I would have to set an appointment every working day. Right, and I actually miscalculated how many working days I was going to have that year, which ended up being like 270, and I had to hit 270 appointments. And if I didn't hit 270 appointments, I was out of coaching. Yeah. Not just coaching with Tom, like out of his organization. Yeah. Right, and I know like how big, in even a short amount of time, how drastically it changed my life, as well as like the potential. Like Tom was like the perfect definition of success, right? Amazing business, well invested, surrounded by people who love him, has a great family, dedicated to his wife, dedicated to his kids. Like, he is the definition of success, right? So he is everything I want to be in life, right? And to lose him would be devastating, devastating. And so that's when I got introduced with committed versus interested, right? I wasn't interested in setting 270 appointments. It was commitment. I had no other choice. It meant that if it was 7:30, or 8 o'clock at night, and I hadn't set an appointment for that day, I had to keep calling, right? Commitment.
It's huge. And I listened to, you did a podcast on Tom Ferry's channel with one of the guys, and we're going to put the links. So everybody that is interesting to know how you did that, they should watch. It's about 40 minutes. It's amazing what you did, and I think it can help a lot of people. And sometimes you need accountability, right? Even though, like, I'm disciplined, but I need accountability. I can't do it myself. And we see that why are the team always bigger than the one individual? There is something that happens when you are in a team, right?
Right.
What is that?
The accountability piece, I mean, it's huge, right? Because it's to break it down and make it very simple, like, when I work out, right? If I do it by myself, I do an okay job. But if I have a trainer, right, I bust ass, right? Or if I have a workout partner, like, I can't make an excuse not to show up, right? Or if I'm in one of those spin classes, right, and there's an instructor cheering you on, and then there's the people on either side of you cheering on, you're just in it, right? You're in it together. And then the team mentality is even more, right? You're all thriving for one goal. You're in it together. That's why accountability is so important, to have people around you that know what your goals are and that also support your goals. Like, I know several people who are in relationships, but the other person hasn't bought in, and they almost hold them back. Right? I'm very lucky that my partner, my wife, supports my goals. Right? She is the wind beneath my wings. And Think and Grow Rich, it says, behind every great man is a great woman. Right? Roxanne is an amazing, amazing, amazing woman. She works harder than I do. Right? And the reason I say that is, one, she's full time with me, but then she's also a full-time mom. She's not a part-time mom. She is a full-time mom. So when we get up at 4:30 in the morning, like, I have normally slept all night. She's up 2 or 3 times with the kids, right? And still gets up with me to do the morning routine. She's a champion in herself, right? But we're accountable to each other, right? And when, sometimes I want to slack off, and she's there to push me forward, right? She doesn't want me to have to go to my kids and say, the goals and dreams and aspirations I promised you is not going to happen because. Right?
That's incredible. And I just want to mention about, speaking of Tom Ferry, and I hope it's okay that I mention your bet with him right now.
Oh yeah.
That you're gonna lose 20 pounds till August up to the summit. And one thing that is pretty cool with
and what happens if I lose?
You're gonna pay $10,000.
$10,000. Yeah.
So that's awesome, and you're gonna make it. And the cool part with that, and kind of the story you told us at Ignite, you talked about you met some friends that are pretty successful, and this bet came up. You're gonna lose 10,000 if you don't lose 20 pounds till August, basically. And I think your friend said something along the way, yeah, you're crazy. And then your wife said, no, my husband doesn't lose bets like that. And I cringe, because that is, when you are supported like that, how can you lose? And it also shows that you're committed to doing this. So this is something that I love, and that's something that reminds me of my father a lot. He's super disciplined. Even though he's retired now, he's just teaching kids, he's loving it in karate, but he wakes up 5 every morning, the same routine. Even though he's retired, that's just part of how he's carrying himself. And that's why I think even when you're in that Tommy Bahama sweater, you're probably going to wake up pretty early.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not the exact same routines, but it's part of who you are, right? And can we just talk about the mornings? What's so special about mornings? Because you don't know that, but I actually wrote a book about morning routines. This is in Swedish, actually, but I interviewed 100 people, about 50 here in the US, that are super great at what they do about their morning routines, but also in Sweden, successful entrepreneurs and athletes, and I made a book out of it. And I have some tools that I'm going to share with you after that I think you can enjoy as well. But what is it about mornings that's so special?
Listen, I'm a student of success, right? So I studied other successful people, right? And one of the things that you will learn is that successful people have a strong morning routine, right? Because when we need more time, in order to get more time, right, it's in the mornings, right? So morning, I was introduced recently to Morning Miracle, right? I think it's been a couple of years now, I say recently, but Morning Miracle, right? Where it talks about waking up early and doing, I think it's SAVERS is the acronym that everything stands for. So my wife and I, because again, we support each other, and what's important to her is that she's, is able to be ready and spend time with the kids in the morning. So we have to get up early in order to do our morning routine, do our exercise, and then for her to be able to spend time with the kids, right? So at 4:30 in the morning, the alarm goes off. And I forgot, there's a book out there, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name. Oh, Mel Brooks.
The 5-second rule.
The 5-second rule. And every morning we do the countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we wake up, and then when my mind goes to hitting the snooze button, right? It's like, do I want to have that conversation with Julian today? Do I want to say I'm sorry, right? And no, I don't. Well, my why, my dream board, and there's a reason why my dream board is right across from my desk, right? So that I can look at it every day and realize what my why is. And sometimes, it's about providing the wedding, for my daughter that she always wanted. Sometimes it's about buying my wife, the diamond necklace that she wants. Sometimes it's about helping, thousands of kids live extraordinary lives. Sometimes it's about driving the convertible Ferrari. Like, it just, luckily there's, I have big whys, and then I have little whys, and whatever I need to grab from that in order to move from being interested to committed, I will.
And let's be honest here, like, it's not always fun to wake up early, to go to bed early, right?
It's never fun. Like, morning, there's not a day
People should know
this
that.
is fun. No, it's hard every single day. It is hard every single day waking up at that time, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't want to hit the snooze button, right? But I it's like door knocking, right? Like, most agents, right, don't want to do door knocking. Going door to door is very challenging, right? And I built my career going door to door. And I, to be honest with you, I wasn't, and still am not, very good at it. And I didn't get a ton of business from doing it. But I knew input, output. I knew there are laws of this universe, right? And laws of attraction. And I knew if I put the input in, I would get the output, right? If I put the energy in, I'd get something in return for it. But there wasn't a day that didn't go by where I did not want to get out of that car and go door knocking, right? And there still isn't, right? But I had to use the why or the commitment in order to do that. Like, we can all think about a time in our lives where we committed to something, or maybe someone told us we couldn't do it, and we're like, no, yes, I can, and then we did it. Right? And I had to draw from those experiences numerous times in order to hit that commitment, right? And then once you accomplish something like that, like, you build your confidence up, and that's why you can continually commit to something, and then continually move the bar, right? We all have our big, hairy, audacious goals, and they are scary.
They are, and I mean, it's just, I recognize this, like, who wants to be punched in the face, but who wants to stand on the top of that competition and get the #1 place, and who wants to look at the highlight reel? Everybody wants to do that, but you need to take a punch or two to get there. And I know you're super busy. I'm not going to take up much more of your time. I'm just going to mention a couple of books that you recommended and to me, and I've ordered them, started doing my due diligence to learn even more about that. Some of them I read in the past, but I'm going to reread them. And then I only have one last question, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, totally.
So before, I'm just going to do a shameless plug. This is my book, the goal book. I wrote that in 40 days, and it's about setting goals in the different areas of life and finding a balance between them. I've given you one, and I hope you will enjoy it.
I definitely will.
And the cool part with this book is that I've never written a book when I did it, but I said I'm going to do it in 40 days because I Googled how many pages is a book, and Google said if you type in Times New Roman in Word, 100 pages is going to be a book that's 160 pages once you print it. And if we look at this here, Google was a little bit off. It's actually 161 afterward. So that's a pretty cool thing. And
Really
I just
awesome.
followed this step, 2.5 pages a day. Basically, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to write 2.5 pages a day about something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So that's just that. But let's talk about Think and Grow Rich. So what do you think about that book?
Think Grow Rich. So I am currently reading it for I think the 4th time.
Yeah.
I think anybody in business, this is basically your Bible, right? Anybody in sales, how to win friends and influence people. But anybody in business, Think and Grow Rich. I mean, here's a guy who has studied some of the most successful businessmen in history and wrote a book on his findings. And I have implemented what I learned in this. In fact, those at home can't see it, or those listening can't see it, but on my door right there is the success formula.
Yeah.
It is part of me now, right? The principles of success are part of me, right? And if you follow this book, you will become successful. Not just read it, right? You got to take the actions. But if you follow what are pretty basic and easy steps, you will achieve massive success, right? And I'm still, after I'm done reading it this time and redoing the workbook, I'm sure in a few years I will pick it back up and continue to progress, because every time I read it, I learn something new, because I'm also in a different area in my life.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. If you want to commit to, doing something or a book, this is key.
This is something, and then you talked about how to win friends and influence people. Can you just talk about that book?
So how to influence and influence people. Again, if you're in sales, this is your Bible, right? This is how to speak with people. Your favorite word in the English or Swedish, dictionary is actually Peter, right? Your favorite subject is Peter, right? To be a great conversationalist, it's not about talking about me. Like right now, I think you're a great conversationalist, but if you go back to this recording, it's because you've been having me talk for 90% of the time, right? People want to talk about themselves. So it's about connecting with them, building rapport, and getting to I will tell you a great example of this story, right? So real estate, right? Real estate story. We do better marketing than pretty much anybody around. Right, I've done competitive analysis and I know what they do. So I know that any seller is better off listing their home with us, because we're going to get them more money from the amount of marketing we do plus our skill set. Right, but I kept on losing listings to my competitor. And my marketing manager at that time, who had witnessed me going on a listing presentation, so when I was going to present to a seller to list their house, said, you're not connecting with these people. What your competitor is very good at, and she knows this because before she worked with me, her parents sold their home with my competitor. And she said what this other agent is very good at is connecting with the seller. And people want to do business with people they like. And they don't like you. Not that they dislike me, but it was all about like, look what we can do. Right? But I wasn't making that connection with people. Right? So I geeked out on rapport building and went back to this book, which is, again, key. If you're going to be in sales, this is how to win friends and influence people.
You got to read it. So let's move on to mindset.
Okay, so I'm reading this the second time. So growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Another great book for anybody in business and also any parent, because there's a lot of good parenting in here as well. So going into it, like I had done a lot of work on my mindset. So I was like, okay, great. I have a growth mindset.
Yeah.
Right. Mindset, the new psychology of success. What I realized is I'm probably 50-50 on a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, which is an eye-opener.
Yeah.
What I talked about in Ignite, which I live by, and part of being sober is we have to continually doing honest self-appraisals, right? I have to take an inventory on myself to see, what my character defects are, because unless I'm brutally honest with myself, I'm not going to know what they are, and they're going to be in my blinders because I'm not going to want to face them.
And that's hard to be brutally honest with yourself.
One of the hardest things to do, right? It's much easier to blame than it is to take responsibility, right? We have a part in anything.
Yeah.
If you have a resentment in your life right now, you have a major part in that resentment.
Yeah. I mean, I decided a couple of years ago to whatever happens in my life, I'm going to take responsibility for it. And it's changed my life massively. It's always my fault in a way. And when I do that, I'm not a victim anymore, and it's been life-changing.
Life-changing.
So that's great.
Let me go on. But
sure.
For fixed, again, with the growth mindset versus fixed mindset, with the growth mindset, basically anything and everything is possible, and you can become a continual student. Whereas in a fixed mindset, it's, you have a set amount of intelligence or skill. Yeah. So what I tell people all the time, like, you don't need to be successful in real estate. Like, you don't need massive skills in selling, right? Because they can be learned, right? Real estate, which we'll get to in the book, I think you have it, but real estate is simple. I actually think life is simple. Yeah. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Yeah. The next one is Never Split the Difference with Chris Voss.
Yeah, so this is a good book. I will tell you, it's not a great book. It is a good book.
Yeah.
The reason I talked about this a lot is because, whatever field you are in, you need to be a student of that field, right? And so being in real estate, you have to be a student of negotiating, right? So you go and you seek who are the best negotiators. Obviously Chris Voss, who was the head of the FBI for the kidnapping division for the negotiating, was the best in his field, and now has dedicated his life to helping those in business. Yeah. So it's about being a student, and I learned a lot of information from here. I don't use all of his tactics, because negotiating a real estate deal versus negotiating a hostage, kidnapping situation is different, and sometimes you do need to split the difference. But there's also many aspects of this book, like labeling, that I utilize. But the lesson to be learned with this book is be a student. I don't know, even in my level of success, if that's what you want to call it, I don't know everything. Yeah. In fact, I know very little, and I have a lot more to learn.
And that's how the masters speak. There was I'm going to do this really quick. It was a story about a martial arts master, and people came to him, can you teach me? You're the master. And he was just smiling all the time. And he said, no, I'm learning from everybody. And that's kind of, the masters are saying that. So kudos to you. The Slight Edge, I've been reading it now 10 pages a day, as they are talking about in the book. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, so one of the things I told you was 10 pages a day. Yeah. Where did I get that from? Think and Grow Rich, right? Again, I would say this is probably my favorite book all time. Yeah. Right, and it's the most simplest of books, right? But what it talks about basically is, and read it, don't just get my summary, but basically it says that there are no quantum leaps to success, right? It's in the small decisions that we make every single day that either put us on the path of success or the path of failure, and you can't be on both, right? If I have to lose weight, so I win this bet. Right? So if I choose to eat a salad for lunch today, I'm not going to see any results tomorrow. Yeah. But if I choose to eat a salad today and tomorrow and Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, for a period of time, I will start to see those results, right? And there's something called compounding interest, right? The results start to compound. But at the same time, it's easy for me to eat a salad. It's easy for me to eat a hamburger. And if I eat a hamburger for lunch today, I'm not going to, gain weight, right? And I probably would be okay. But if I ate a hamburger for a week or for a month, Instead of losing weight, I'll probably start gaining weight. Well, it's the same thing when we implement our lives. Again, life is simple. Success is simple, right? It's easy for me to wake up and do my morning routine. It's easy for me not to, right? Yeah. It's easy for me to kiss my wife in the morning and tell her that she looks beautiful. It's easy for me not to. It's easy for me, to pick my son up and give him, another try. Or it's easy for me, just to let him sit there and cry. I mean, there's so many aspects in our life where it's the small decisions that we make every single day that either put us on the success curve up or down. But the awesome part of this is most of us have experienced some type of success, right? We've all hit bottoms in our lives in one area or another. And then we draw the line and say, okay, enough's enough, and I'm going to take actions to get to change. And we do that, right? We get our head above water, financially, love, business, whatever it is. But the difference between those who have attained, massive success is most people, once they get their head above water, they stop doing the things that got their head above water, right? Or they stopped dieting, they stopped eating healthy, they stopped exercising. They're on cruise control, and then they, drift back down. What the successful people have done, and it's not just a quantum leap that one day they just became successful. Of course, there are a few like outliners, but that's not most. The majority, they kept on doing the things that got their head above water, and they kept on doing those same activities, and then they had the compound effect of that, right? The sister book to this, or the brother book to this, is the compound effect, right? They actually were partners. The Slight Edge was a little more basic, which I like. But again, there's not a day goes by that I don't question a decision I make and ask myself, is this the right Slight Edge decision?
That's awesome. And I mean, I've just started reading the book. I didn't know about it before you told me about it. But when I look back at my life, I was never talented. I never had like the best circumstances, but it was those small steps because I had the discipline from the martial art. So that one is huge. And then one book that I'm looking for now is the James Suarez book. What's the title of that one, and when is that coming out?
It's funny because one of my agents is a writer as well, and she's like, we can ghostwrite a book. It's a goal of mine, right? I haven't committed to it yet, but it's definitely a goal of mine. If I had to write a book about real estate or sales, it would definitely be confidence. Right, if you have confidence, you will make it in this game, which also goes along in believing in yourself. Right, in Think and Grow Rich, what your mind can conceive and believe, you can achieve. Right, and the key to that is belief. You got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in what you're going after. If you don't believe, you will not achieve.
Time is running out. One last question. I know you're busy, and I'm super grateful that we did this podcast. And this is something that I ask all my guests. It's all great to share stories and all of that, but we want the people that are listening and watching this to take action. That's how I reach my goal of helping 10 million people, and that's how we create a better world. So what is that first step that people can take when they're done listening to this podcast right now?
Make a commitment. Make that commitment. That is, you're not interested in it, you're committed to it, you're going to burn the bridges behind you. Maybe you make a massive bet, right? With my mentor, that $10,000 check is already in the mail to him. He already has it, right? Because if I don't succeed, well, I will succeed, but he will cash it. But figure out making a commitment. It's not something you're interested in, something that you're committed to doing, and then you accomplish it. And then once you see that you're able to accomplish it and you took the right Slight Edge decisions to accomplish it, then you're on that path to success, and then anything and everything is possible.
Love it. James Suarez, my honor of being here with you today, and that you took the time to sit down with me here, sharing your journey means the world to me. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. I think what you're doing is awesome. I truly support it.
Thank you. And thank you everybody who watched the I Love Success podcast and listened to this. We're all about sharing. We're all about helping. If you like what we do, go to ilovesuccess.co. There's a bunch of conversations with amazing people just like James here. You can get a couple of free chapters of my book, and there's so much tools for you so you can get started instead of just sitting all day watching things online. That is all great, but get to action, and get to action now. Thank you so much. Bye.